So we've got Tony Roos is going to be here helping me do the presentation. Like I said, we're going to present some information for those people who haven't seen the information before, and then we'll have a couple opportunities for other comments and discussion. Okay. So with that, I will open up the share screen. So can everybody see the screen?
No.
No?
I see it.
Okay. And obviously, since this is awkward, I'll make sure that this presentation, and actually we're being recorded, so all the chat's being recorded and everything's being recorded, so this will all go up on the website also, just for full transparency. So know that as we move forward. So who was it that couldn't see the screen?
This is Tyler Smith. I'm still showing your website being down. I've got 2 different internet connections open at the same time and showing the Newberg website's not working.
Huh. Okay.
So therefore I can't register for it to even show up on Zoom.
Right. What I can do is have the PowerPoint sent to you just so you kind of can see what we're talking about at the same time. Does that work?
Sure.
Okay.
Karen, I can do that really quick.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. All right. So with that, we're going to talk about the Elliott Road Sidewalks and Bike Lanes project. This is information for those of you who haven't heard it before. For those of you who were at the open house last fall, this is some new information, or where we came to from those discussions back in the fall. So, and we did have a conversation with the City Council on May 18th, and they've asked us to bring this back to the community. So what is the project? The project is really to extend bike lanes and sidewalks. That's the main goal of the project. There's obviously gaps in the sidewalk through this location. There is no safe biking in this location. And there's actually flooding problems also. So why this project? Why now? So the project, because again, there's gaps in the sidewalk, so it's dangerous for kids and vulnerable users. Those people that have mobility problems, there is no easy way for them to get from their homes to 99 or through the community or the neighborhood at all, especially without crossing the street in dangerous locations. It is a critical bicycle and pedestrian route up into the neighborhood. And then the project is also going to be designed to improve safety, reduce speeds, and solve storm drainage and flooding issues. So why now? The project has really been on the books since the 70s. It has been put off for a variety of reasons throughout the years. I'm not sure I can always tell you why it was put off, but we're trying to build the critical routes for both ADA, bicycle, ped throughout the city. We did build a road a couple years ago, and now you can at least walk all the way from 99 to Mountain View on Villa Road on sidewalks. You do have to cross the street, but there are safe crossings to cross the street on that street. So that's always our goal throughout the system. So here's map of the ADA critical routes. So it's got both the bike lanes and the sidewalks. And this was adopted by the council in 2007 as part of the ADA pedestrian and route plan. So what you'll see here is that Elliott Road is a critical route. It brings you up into the neighborhood, hooks up with Hayworth, and then hooks up to Deborah, Springbrook on the one end, and Villa Road on the other. You know, the idea when you look at these is to look at, you know, north, south, and east-west connections. And so the whole idea is to hopefully make them all match up at some point. Eventually, we have heard about Hayworth, and I know I misspoke at the council meeting on May 18th. Hayworth actually will have bike lanes eventually. We already started that process when the pool went in. We actually installed bike lanes through there. Right now, through the rest of it, there are just sharrows, which again are still bike lanes. It's just that the bikes are sharing the road with the cars. Obviously, that's not as comfortable for a more vulnerable bicycle user. So there is a plan. And here is the overall critical route map, again, showing Elliott Road as a critical route to provide those provide for vulnerable users, pedestrians, bicyclists, those people who just want to recreate also. So that's where those maps come from and how they all work together. So funding sources for the project. There are multiple funding sources. One is gas tax revenues, and gas tax, when we use gas taxes, it requires us to install bike lanes. Actually, the state law requires bike lanes to be installed whenever a street is constructed or reconstructed. So that would be one funding source. There are stormwater funds for the flooding issues. System development charges are charges that are paid by developers. They're a one-time fee, and they allow for what's considered additional capacity, which includes bike lanes and sidewalks, because you're providing additional transportation capacity, just not necessarily in a car. There are no general funds associated with this project. So it's not affected by the COVID-19, and we can't spend it on any non-transportation or stormwater project. Sorry, things are going slow here. So what we previously heard at the walkabouts and at the open houses, that sidewalks were widely supported along the entire corridor. People desired traffic safety and calming and reducing the speeds. And they wanted to address the variety of lane widths. Many supported bicycle facilities, but not all did. People wanted to save the trees. They were concerned about the property impact and on-street parking, the loss of, and also actually leaving on-street parking. People were concerned about that also. And then drainage problems identified by the residents. So some additional considerations. We did hear about the commercial development traffic there at Panda Express and Starbucks. We did do a 48-hour video count. This is back in the fall to monitor what the traffic looked like coming in and out of that development. And we didn't witness any safety or queuing issues found. So we can continue to monitor that as we move forward, but that wasn't found at that stage in the game. Trees, we did complete the arborist study, and we are looking to try and save as many of the trees as we can. The sequoia at 99W is going to be protected and saved. The project does include undergrounding of utilities, and that provides for safer in the sense that the trees won't impact and the wind won't impact, you know, lines coming down or any of those kinds of things. Another thing to know is that walkability adds value to homes, to the neighborhood, and to the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony.
So after the
Talk about the
you there, Carl?
Yep.
Okay, and I'm unmuted.
I can hear you.
Okay, so after the neighborhood walkabout and the open house, we developed some alternatives for the roadway cross section. Number one, shown on the left of the screen, is your typical major collector for the city that Elliott Road would be built to by developers. So it's a 5-foot sidewalk, 6-foot landscape strip, a 6-foot bike lane, and a 12-foot travel lane mirrored on both sides for a total right-of-way width of 60 feet. Looking at options for the roadway, we looked at, what else can we do to provide additional protection for bicyclists and for the public to change the configuration, realign the spaces. So the first thing we looked at was maintaining that same curb to curb width, 5-foot sidewalk, 6-foot landscape strip, but instead of an at grade bicycle lane, we'd raise the bicycle lane up 4 inches and create a raised cycle track. Everything else is the same. That raised cycle track would be asphalt or concrete. Then we moved into option 3, which is bottom center, and that's the buffered bike lane. And that looks at a couple different things. So one, we increase the sidewalk width to 6 feet. It's more pedestrian friendly. So somebody that is in a wheelchair can safely and easily pass by a pedestrian that's walking without either one of them having to step off the sidewalk. By doing that, we reduce the width of the landscape strip down to 4.5 plus a 6-foot curb, so a total of 5 feet. Then we took a foot of the travel lane and added that to the bicycle lane. So you have a 5-foot bicycle lane and a 2-foot striped buffer on the roadway. Again, the right-of-way width would be 60 feet for that alternative. Number 4, 5, and 6 would all require development code changes from the city through Planning Commission, City Council. But we looked at them anyways, just to see what the taste would be for them. So the number 4 in the top right takes the bicycle lane and puts it next to the sidewalk and makes the travel lanes 11 feet. Puts the pedestrians and the bicyclists for the entire corridor side by side. Still within that same 60-foot right-of-way. The option 5 is a shared use path on the right-hand side of or one side of the road or the other. It's shown on the right-hand side in this exhibit, but that could be flipped to either side of the road. And this option is not really great in situations where you're not connecting to regional trails that have the same path, because bicyclists would have to cross over to the side, one side of the road, ride down Elliott, and then cross over to catch their next destination cross street that they're trying to go to. Number 6, very bottom right, is what this would look like under bare bone minimum widths. 10-foot travel lanes, the city would really have to change their prescriptions to what they allow. We're showing that the raised cycle track probably be an at-grade paving cycle track or paved bicycle lane, 5.5 feet wide, really narrow landscape strip, and a 5.5-foot sidewalk to get down to a 50-foot right-of-way width out to out. So, Karin, next.
Don't want to interrupt, but unable to view 4, 5, or 6 if you can do anything about that.
I had to move my panel with pictures of people over to the other side to see them. I don't know.
Well,
Does
thank
that work?
you. It does. It
I
does
just moved
work.
it. I moved it for everybody, at least on my end.
Are the notes and slides for these going to be sent out to everybody? Because some of us can't get online right now. We're doing it over the phone, and obviously we can't see anything.
Yeah, we will. We'll have this PowerPoint posted up on the website tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. There we go.
So the alternatives we looked at, this is main corridor. So in addition to what the general corridor would look like, we're also adding curb extensions to help get the speeds down by introducing some variation in the width, the perceived width of the roadway. So that's, I'll show on the further, as we go further into the presentation, but this is the general cross section of the roadway. So we started looking at things that make a difference of evaluating these cross sections. And in a school zone, we're connected to the high school, the intermediate school, and a grade school, and as well as the pool at the other end of Hallworth. The national guidance for roadways is to look at level of stress for bicyclists and pedestrians. And the bicycle level of stress, you're trying to target the 50 to 60%, the interested but concerned rider. The very top guys, the strong and fearless and the enthused and confident, those are the guys and gals that will take the travel lane and sometimes go as fast or faster than the cars are going to drive. The facility that we're designing is not for them. They can use it, but we don't design for them. We're designing these facilities for the 50 to 60% of the riders in the city that are the young families that will ride on a road if the facility is safe and continuous. And to be in a school zone, we want to target a level of stress of 1. That's the best, the lowest level of stress for the bicyclists. And based on the volume, the traffic volume in the roadway, it's about 3,000 cars a day today, projected, the growth rate, but it's 3,000 cars is right at that cutoff of, we want to be right at that line. Speeds are averaging 28 miles an hour today. Hopefully it goes down once the curb extensions are built out. The width of the bicycle lane factors into that. So the 7-foot buffered bike lane and being next to the lower speed, 28 miles an hour, 3,000 cars, that gets us to a bicycle level of stress of 1. For the pedestrian level of stress, it is based on the sidewalk width. So a sidewalk width of 6 feet gets us down to a level of stress of 1. If there is a sidewalk, a planter strip or bike lane between the vehicles and the pedestrians. So the further we get the pedestrians away from the drivers and introduce some landscape between the driver and the pedestrian, their level of stress goes down as well. And so targeting that as a 1 for the schools. Go ahead.
So at this point, we were hoping that we could kind of go around, and if other people had come up with other options that weren't shown here. I know, Dan, you had come up with a couple as in putting I was actually just rereading your email, trying to see if you had said putting the sidewalk just on the west side, and then having parking, I believe, on the east side is what you said. I was just rereading your email to make sure I got those right. But I also want to see if anybody else had anything else that we hadn't thought of as we went through these options.
Yes, we've got lots of other suggestions that have not been heard yet.
Okay. And if you could introduce yourself and then just go ahead and we'll do one at a time.
Okay, great. This is Tyler Smith. I'll go first if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So yes, first, thanks for repeating the presentation from the City Council meeting, and I really appreciate that. and wanted to address specifically the counselors' I guess, comments, and we appreciate them sort of letting us revisit this, and we hope that this can be a collaborative process where the city, particularly staff, I am perfectly willing to recognize that you and your staff and your drawing and your renderings are fantastically a dream plan if you had a blank slate. But what we have here is not a blank slate. One of the city councilors mentioned that old neighborhoods don't necessarily match up real well with new and preferred design alternatives. So we're hoping that we can look at this with a fresh perspective and take into consideration some of the concerns that at least my clients and the rest of the neighbors have there. So I wanted to ask you guys, Karin, if you could, or if you had any first comment about what your thoughts are on our recommendations that we've made so far.
As in making the parking on the west side and side, again, I was trying to reread the email to make sure I got that in the right spot. But it was sidewalks on the west side and parking on the east side. Is that correct? Dan, can you?
No. So I guess that gets to my point is we had a presentation again today of what you would like to do and what the city would like to do, but our suggestions have not been heard yet. And what Mr. DeHaan was mentioning at the beginning is what we'd like to see is an actual sit-down meeting. Now, I sent over some blow-up pictures of the renderings that highlight some of the design alternatives. Did you receive that?
I did just before this meeting.
Great. Okay. So one of the things that we'd like to point out is, as was mentioned earlier, you pointed out that your transportation system plan and using particular funds that come from the state require there to be bicycle lanes put in. But bicycle lanes, I don't believe, are required to be put on both sides. And if they could be just put on one side with sidewalks and or the bicycle lane on one side, that would make it such that only half of the proposed property and the proposed infringements on the existing property owners would be necessary. So that would be our number one preferred alternative, if that's...
I have a question. Does that mean that bicycle traffic in both directions would be sharing the same lane?
You could probably make two lanes on one side of the road. Sidewalk on one side, bike lanes on another would be a very feasible option.
And what would you do for to ensure that there's a safe crossing for pedestrians?
Where?
Across Elliott, because you'd have to cross Elliott no matter where you're going to go.
I'm not exactly sure why anybody that's on the west side of Elliott would ever need to cross to the east side of Elliott, but unless you're going further down 99. But I suppose if you're already on one of the collector streets, you would stay on that collector street. But wouldn't you use a crosswalk? I'm not entirely sure. Wouldn't you use a crosswalk?
If you're living there halfway down the block, or you're visiting someone halfway down the block, how are you going to get across?
Right. Wouldn't you use a crosswalk?
Where? You go all the way down to the end of the block, and then what? You couldn't come back because the sidewalk wouldn't be on that side. You see what I'm saying?
No, I'm not.
I'm in my wheelchair going down, say, the west side of Elliott. My destination is to visit someplace on the east side, halfway down the block, okay? So I can go down all the way to 99 and cross, or I could go down up to Hayworth and cross, but in either case, I have to travel half the way down Elliott, sharing the traffic, the lane with the automobiles. unless
No, I think the design suggestions here is to have crosswalks in various places on Elliott.
how many places between, how many crosswalks would you have between Hayworth and 99?
I don't have a different design for the entire strip. I'm the attorney for a few of the folks that live along this street, so we haven't designed an alternative for the entirety from 99 all the way to the high school. I'm talking about some of the concepts that should be considered here.
There's an apartment complex halfway down, and if you have a sidewalk only on one side, then you've got pedestrian traffic having to cross 90 or having to cross Elliott in the middle of the block, or sharing lane traffic.
Okay, so if we can hold this thought. So, Mr. Smith, I have that you've talked about bike lanes and sidewalks on one side of the street is one option. So I want to make sure I hear from everybody that might have an alternative. And Nick Anderson raised his hand.
Okay, sure, but I'm not done yet, so I've got more. But
okay.
I know you said we're only going to get a few minutes if there's time, but that's what we're trying to discuss with you. And
Right.
as you don't have any conclusions about our existing recommendations, I'd like to make sure we have time to get them all out.
I appreciate that. And we will come back. I just want to make sure that we hear from everybody. So, Tyler, we will come back to you, but I know that Nick has raised his hand, so I want to hear from him. So you've got bikes and sidewalks on one side, Tyler. Did you have other options right now, or can we listen to other people and then come back?
You're driving the ship here. I've got other options that we can talk about right now, or we can come back.
Well, let's come back, like I said, because Nick had raised his hand, and I want to see what he is wanting to talk about really quick. Okay?
Yeah.
Nick?
Nick went to sleep.
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Awesome. No, I was wanting to know for the road project that we're doing. It was what was the one that you guys were actually planning on trying to implement out of the 6?
Yeah, we were going to get to that one. We'll get to that. It's actually the next slide.
Oh.
Number 3.
Yeah, it's the number 3 with the buffered bike lanes. It's actually a combination of several of them because it has buffered bike lanes, but it also has combined sidewalk bike lanes together where we're at curb extensions and those types of things. So we'll see that in a minute. I just wanted, before we were showing what we were proposing, I wanted to hear if people had others that we hadn't thought about.
Karin, has your proposal changed at all since the city council meeting?
No, it has not.
Okay.
May I jump in, Karin?
Nick, did you have anything else before I let Dan talk?
No, that was it. I was just I was on mute, so I couldn't. I guess raise my hand. I guess.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, perhaps in an effort to partially address Roy's concern, we really haven't had an opportunity to present ideas in their entirety, but certainly, Roy, there would be sidewalks on both sides and absolute. But beyond that, I think it would be so much easier to have this discussion in person. That way, instead of attempting to, in an abstract fashion, explain where the sidewalk would be and how this would be going that way and the other direction, so to speak, if we're sitting at a table across from each other, even maintaining social distancing, I think that we would be moving along much, much further. And Karin, with respect to what you shared now repeatedly, this is awkward. It is equally awkward for us. And so it is difficult to move forward in a positive fashion. But perhaps just to bring this full circle, and I'll conclude momentarily for Roy, definitely sidewalks on both sides of the streets. And to answer the question about crossing the street, surely a crosswalk, no different than is at the intersection of Elliott and Haworth up the street. And if we intend to have those across the cul-de-sacs, which I find kind of redundant, because surely if you're coming from Haworth, and I'm saying this with complete respect because perhaps I'm not quite fully following, but if you were traveling, walking, or mobility challenged, and again, with the assumption of a sidewalk on both, a sidewalk's been accomplished on both sides.
I thought he said, I'm sorry, I thought he said that there was only going to be sidewalks on one side.
No, definitely both sides. So there we go. Again, this is where this would be so much easier in person. We have the awkwardness of this technology causing pausing and communication gaps. But at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Brandy. Thank you.
So, Brandy, did you want to speak right now, or did you want us to move forward and speak at the end? We will have another opportunity.
Yeah, I do have questions about the bike lanes again, and then I feel like without answering the questions, I don't know if I could give a proposal, because I am not 100% against the design, but I also have a hard time with the bike lanes as the plan is right now. And so I have questions about it. Should I wait? Because I don't want to miss an opportunity to propose a different plan, but I feel like
you can always propose at the end too. We're not cutting anybody off.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else want to speak right now?
Yeah.
I've got. And was that Tyler?
Yeah, I would like to go over some of the design, the actual detailed design alternatives we didn't even get into.
Okay.
Okay, so in the frontage of parcel of 704 Elliott Road, which is on the east side of Elliott Road, there is, you'll notice the bike lane is on the street. There's a little bit of an S-turn at the south portion of the 704 Elliott Road. Then you have the a planter strip, which is 6 feet of landscaped. I know there's a lot of concern. I'll sidetrack for a second as to the landscape. There's a lot of concern by the property owners. One, that they don't want to have to perpetually and forevermore pay to landscape something that they don't get to use as they want. And there's also the concern that many of the landowners are not aware that they will have the obligation to maintain that landscape. But getting back on track, there's currently in front of 704 Elliott Road, there's the 7-foot bike lane, then there's the 6-foot landscape buffer, then there's the 5-foot sidewalk. So we have 18 feet of buffer there. What we'd like to do there, which is interfering with the existing parking lots and is going to eliminate at least 2 parking lots from the 704 Elliott Road property. We could eliminate or stop eliminating those parking lots and taking that parking away from the people that live there by combining the green space area, which is 6 feet, and the sidewalk area, and just make one sidewalk there, which is done in other places along this path that's adjacent to the southern parking lot at 704 Elliott Road. So combining the green space and the sidewalk there next to the driveway, then end that combination and separate those out again after the driveway. You could eliminate the lots of that parking lot. And then there's trees and green space that is for the apartment complex at 704 Elliott, and that creates a visual buffer to somehow hide the apartment complex there. And again, the center of 704 Elliott sorry for people that don't have this map. I know it's hard to see a picture. The staff members have this.
Actually,
But
Tyler, I did share it up on the screen.
Oh,
so I
great.
think
Okay,
everybody can see it.
fantastic. So to the center there, if we could eliminate that green space or combine, have a green space / bike lane on there, to eliminate that, we'd be able to save the trees, which would be another design change, a second design change just on 704 Elliott. Then as we go further north, we again have the northern driveway for the apartment complex, which again has the parking lot on the edge of the property that is destroyed because of having all three, the bike lane, a green space, and a sidewalk. We propose eliminating the green space there, which would allow us to push the sidewalk back closer to the bike lane and keep the parking lot intact and the parking space intact, which would minimize the impact on 704 Elliott. So there's three potential changes on 704 Elliott that match with keeping a bike lane, having a sidewalk, and having a minimal impact on the property owner. So if we move further north to 807 Elliott Road, if you can go on to that area there, what we would propose on 807 Elliott Road, one of the biggest concerns is the loss of parking. We can see at 807 Elliott, where this is an example of the current design, already has these bump outs, where the bump out eliminates the green space in certain areas. The green space is not something that's required by the state transportation code. It's not a part of the bike lane. It's maybe a preferred and a nicety to have, but is not required. So we like saving these trees here, and we would again propose eliminating that green space buffer, moving the sidewalk out closer to the bike lane, or alternatively, eliminating the green space there, having a bump out on the street so that the cars can still park there. So the bike lane could be moved up either onto the green space, and the proposed bike lane could then be kept as a parking spot for the 807 Elliott Road. You'd have a bump out. As you see for the trees, there's, I guess, a bump into the street. You could have a bump out from the road where the parking lot is maintained on the south side of 807. And then you'll see again on the far north side of 807, there is again there's a driveway, and there's both all three, bike lane, green space, and sidewalk. All three of those, we propose to eliminate the green space area and allow parking in that area of 807 Elliott Road. So we'd save 2 parking spaces there by having a bump out that would match with the existing bump in that saves the trees, and instead of having all 3 elements on that particular lot, have 1 to 2 of the elements on that lot.
Your call.
Then,
Tyler,
yes.
Tyler, can I jump in here just a minute? Let me show the video, because I think it's going to answer some of these questions, because we did actually pull some of these and remove some of these planter strips in the areas that you were talking about. So can we show that first, and then can we go back to see if we still need to continue on with that piece of the conversation?
I'm not sure what question you're talking about. I didn't know if I raised any questions or asked any questions, but I assume you're wanting to tell me, answer a question I haven't asked yet. So yes, sure.
So yeah, give me a minute, and let's go back to the PowerPoint really quick, and then I think, like I said, we may be showing you some things that maybe you didn't realize that we had already done. So give us a minute, okay? Because we've only got 15 minutes left. We want to make sure we get through all of it, and then we can always come back and have a conversation after everybody else is good. Does that make sense?
And Karin, one of the things we didn't mention while you're pulling that up is that after this presentation, if you are interested in meeting one-on-one, if anybody's interested in meeting with Karin or I, we're both in Newberg quite a bit. So reach out to Karin and she'll arrange for a one-on-one meeting with you.
And this is, forgive me, I don't want to interrupt, but this is the maddening process here. As Attorney Truman acknowledged on the May 18th meeting, we have been ignored since October. I am now at my other home and business for the next 6 months, down here. Last May, I drove up, 500 miles each direction to come up and meet with the mayor to express these concerns. And so it is a bit frustrating. I don't mean to be abrasive, but, and I would very much look forward to meeting Karin, but on the other hand, perhaps Brandy, Jerry, and others can represent my interests. And I'll conclude here, but I think that our attorney here, and I apologize, Tyler, Karin might be onto something here relative to what you're trying to share, but there is currently no parking in front of Brandy's home, my home, and several others on what would be the west side of the street. And we are actually all fine with that. We don't want to see parking. We would like to see the parking maintained on the east side to act as the buffer I spoke of. And at this point, I better wrap it up so Karin can perhaps show the video. But I think there might be some internal confusion there, Tyler, and I do apologize for any lack of clarity on my part. But go ahead, Karin, perhaps your video will clarify, but go ahead. This is the difficulty of doing this online.
Agreed. And certainly once I am back in town next week, again, I apologize. I've had a previously family emergency surgery going on, so I'm out of town, but I will be back in town on Monday. So we can meet next week if you want to meet face to face in that regard. So let me.
Please count me in for a yes. We've been waiting for a meeting for a few months. And
again, the previous project manager has been on extended medical leave, so I took over late in the game. So I apologize for that. Unfortunately, and then between the COVID and the other, again, I will make time. We can meet next week if that works for everybody. So with that, let me finish through here. So the preferred alternative that city staff and the consultants had come up with after listening to all of those considerations that we had heard was the buffered bike lane option. Again, as I noted earlier, excuse me, we actually combine quite a few different alternatives. We do curb bump outs, which allows for bikes and sidewalks to go together, to hook up together at those intersections. The intersections actually narrow the street down. It makes it less that the pedestrian has to cross in those locations. We are also pulling out the planter strip to save some existing trees. And so that is kind of the plan to where we can. So with that, we're going to go to, and give me 1 minute here with a whole technology. So this is kind of a conceptual video of what the design would look like, assuming we move forward with the preferred alternative. And things can still change. There's a lot of detailed design that still needs to happen.
Where did all those pedestrians come from?
They're already there.
Tony, are you?
All right, so starting at 99 and going towards the high school, you'll see the buffered bike lane with a curb-tied sidewalk. Karin, if you can pause right there.
You're assuming that I can make this happen. There, maybe.
Can you slide the slider back a little bit?
Yep.
We didn't practice this, so.
We did not.
All right, and pause right there. So that is the front of the apartments there. Okay, and hopefully you can see that we've moved the sidewalk to curb tight. To do that, we did increase it to 6 feet. So pedestrians next to, directly next to the pavement, we want to have that 6 foot width. It's standard practice in most agencies, and the city has blessed that as well. I mean, you see, we did drop that down, got rid of the landscape strip that Tyler was talking about. All right, go ahead.
And that's 704 Elliott?
That was the apartment, Cedar Terrace.
Okay.
And pause again. So this is the first curb extension at Norwood Court. And that's where the bikes and peds are coming together to come through the intersection. Traffic is restricted down. Pause again. On the left-hand side, we just passed Mr. DeHaan's property, and we are staying curb tight on the sidewalk from just left of, or just south of Mr. DeHaan's property to avoid the big maple tree. And then it stays curb tight on the west side most of the way, if not all the way, to Hallworth. So go ahead, Karen.
So the pictures that we sent earlier, then those must be outdated. The design that we sent showing all three being utilized in front of Mr. DeHaan's property, that's an outdated.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Stone sent you the revised version, at least for Cedar Terrace last month, and Karen sent you the new one for Mr. DeHaan and Mr. Avila earlier this week or late last week.
Yeah, I got one from Sherman today, yeah. So great.
So these do have the LED lights, and we'll put backlighting on them so it minimizes the amount of light that goes backwards onto the property. So we're eliminating just the roadway, the sidewalk, and the bike lane. And here's going past the church into Willow. And so this is where we got the landscape strip and the sidewalk.
Can you, I don't know if it's possible to stop at Mr. Avaleo's property, 911 Elliott, so I can see what the visual.
Thank you. I can try. And Brandy, you had a question. You were waving your hand earlier.
Brandy, are you still there? Karen was asking for you.
You might have to unmute her, Karen. While you're playing with the video.
She's
directly across from Norwood Court.
Pause there, Karen. You gotta hit the pause button again. It's still going. There we go.
Okay.
It's weird. It's got this delay thing that's going on here.
I was able to see it.
You were not? Okay, hold on.
I was, yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
So do you
So
want to mute Brandy?
I did not have her muted.
She may have muted herself to stop
okay.
the working.
Okay. Let me see what I can do here.
Thank you. Sorry, I did mute myself earlier, and then it made it so I couldn't unmute myself.
Sorry about that.
The property that's south of our property on Elliott Road, just next to ours. Can you go? I mean, don't even try. It's okay. Don't worry about it. No, that's hard. But in the simulation, it shows that he has one parking driveway, but he actually has two. Has there been an outreach to him? I know he speaks Spanish. Has anybody reached out to him?
That's a design detail that we're working on. We caught that after the plan was made.
Okay, good. That's just one of my questions, but that's the one that I saw when we were going through the simulation that, you know, he probably would like both of his driveways. So thank you.
And this video is...
Go ahead. Okay, I think, so a couple things just for, we have 4 more minutes. So Tony and I are more than willing to stay on for another 10 minutes or so if people want to go ahead and stay and ask some more questions. Let me go to one more slide after the video here to kind of talk about what our next steps are, and then we'll open it back up for comments for anybody who can stick around and wants to have additional comments or questions. So we're going to take comments and questions, ideas tonight. We'll, you know, feel free to call me, email me through June 10th. I only say June 10th so I can compile them all and get them to the council before the council meeting. There is a traffic safety commission meeting on June 10th, and we will give this presentation to them and get their feedback. And if anybody wants to attend that meeting, unfortunately, that is still Zoom. Policy of the city right now is all commissions and stuff are still going virtual for the safety of all. And then we'll be looking at the preliminary evaluation of any comments or ideas that we get tonight or in the next couple of days, and be able to follow up with commenters and the council with that. And then we'll present this information along with anything else to the city council on June 15th. So with that, I'm going to go down the list and just make sure that people that haven't already talked, whether they want to talk first before I let people that have already talked go forward. I have Joe Morlock, Jeff Van Bergen, either, and I'm going to ask you guys to unmute and then just, if you have something you want to say.
Good, Karen, thank you. That was Jeff.
You're welcome. Hi, Jeff. Joe, Joe Morlock, did you want to speak at all?
No, I was just listening into the concerns and to the design phase as well. So I was, you know, I'm always interested in safety of pedestrians and bicyclists and things like that, because of course it dead ends at our property. So no, I've appreciated the conversation tonight. So thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay. Meryl Kunkel, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I don't have any questions per se. I appreciated the video and the conversation again. It does, from my view, seem like a compromise was made in a lot of the different plans based on a lot of the concerns and suggestions of homeowners. I live in the cul-de-sac, so I don't live right on the road. So I'm sure I have different concerns than folks that live right on Elliott, but I appreciate the use of the bike lanes, and yeah, I don't know, I like the compromise. It seems like a good compromise. I did have a question in regards to the easements. that the city is looking to acquire from the homeowners. How big is that? How many feet are we talking?
It varies depending on the location. So there's two different things. There's easements that actually we're trying to acquire from the school district property for storm drainage. And then there's what we call right-of-way, which is where the road actually goes into. And then there's a possibility there might need to be easements also for the utility undergrounding. That's still a question in the air. That design is still ongoing, so we don't know those answers yet. So it varies depending on the location about how much we need to acquire from people. And when we say acquire, know that we do, the city does pay for it. We pay fair market value for any property that we need to acquire for the project, or any project for that matter. So we don't just come in and take people's property for that. We do have to pay for that. So just kind of for future reference on that.
I think that from my understanding from the city council meeting previously, and from what you guys said at the city council meeting, that the road is going to need improvement in the next 5-10 years at least. So from my perspective, the city is going to be throwing money at the road. So since that will be the case, let's do it in a way that will work for the growth and the development of the community and for the plans that the city set aside for pedestrians and bicyclists and easy access. So I appreciate that. I don't have any further questions.
What's going to, Karen?
Yes.
This may be outside the scope of the traffic side of things, but what's going to happen to the existing overhead lines that go into some roofs and that kind of thing for current power lines?
So where those exist, that we would, excuse me, we would pay for the utilities to be hooked back up to the houses underground. So all of that impact would be paid for as part of the project. There's 10 properties, I believe, that have overhead power right now. And so they would be the ones that would be impacted in that scenario.
And so they'll have to pay to run their lines down to the ground?
No, the city would pay as part of the project. And there are, just to kind of follow up on the question about how much property we need to acquire, it's between, again, it varies. There's 5 properties that we need to acquire right away from, and it varies from 12 to 16 feet, depending on the location.
And the property owners at this point don't want to sell. Is that correct?
That has been the indication so far for 3 of the 5. The other 2 have been, we are not in significant negotiations yet because we don't have the authority to do that. But of the 5 we've talked with the other 2 don't have the concerns that the 3 do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody else want have any comments, questions, concerns that they want us to take a look at? Brandy has a comment. Thank you, whoever's monitoring my chat. I'm struggling to talk and chat at the same time. I mute you again. Let me.
Thank you. Sorry, we have noisy kids in the back playing. So I have just some questions. You were saying I had time to ask some questions at the end. Is that now?
Certainly.
Thank you. Okay. So on the critical route map that you were, how come Deborah, which is the route to the elementary school, is not considered a critical route PPA and bike lanes? Why will there not be bike lanes on that road?
Part of it has to do with the connections to 99W and the fact that at Elliott Road there is a signal, which means it's a safe crossing in that location. So whereas Deborah doesn't have that at this stage of the game, and actually, if you talk to ODOT, never will.
So how will
whether
the kids
we
get
want
safely
to or not.
to the elementary school then, if there's no bike lanes? Like if we're talking about safety and we're talking about those concerned but interested bikers, which are children, how would they get to school safely if they can't go to Deborah, which is to the elementary school? And it also to the high school and middle school, actually, that's the main entrance to both of those. So how does that work?
Right.
Thanks.
They will have, let me take a look at the map again. I'm gonna, and I'll pull that back up, Brandy, so we can look at it together. Roy, did you have anything else you wanted to add for the group? I know you were talking earlier, but didn't get a chance to finish your thoughts.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to point out is that homeowners along Elliott have a responsibility to install and maintain sidewalks, and they simply have failed to do that. And I want to make that very, very clear that not having sidewalks is not an option. It is a requirement. It's the law. And I'm tired of waiting and not being able to get around, because some homeowners enjoy the use of sidewalks everywhere else in the city, but won't pay for them in their own place. It's a requirement.
No, but it seems like
Not a fair statement. I'll pour the concrete tomorrow with you.
Well, fine, because
sidewalks
it's not
too.
been there since 1975.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And the city should have put in a sidewalk. Agreed. A sidewalk years ago.
I still have questions too, just so you know. There's just a few. I know you said we had time, so I'd love to have those asked too, if that's okay.
Yeah. So, so Brandy, I just pulled up on the screen. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
It's
Thank
small,
you.
I'll admit. But that's the ADA critical route map, and I'm not sure if I have the bike, specifically the bike map. But you'll see that Deborah Road is kind of blue, which means it's still a critical route. It's just not a primary critical route. So there's kind of a differentiation for that. So it's still going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Okay. Okay, so and then that goes right into my next question about Haworth or Hayworth. The sidewalk or the bike lanes that you're saying will be put in eventually. Two questions. What is the timeline for that, and will that take away on-street parking there as well? Because then we wouldn't have any on-street parking for like a block. So are those two things, can you answer those two things?
Yeah, so right now the Hayworth project is not in the 5-year plan today. We, certainly that's something that we can have conversations about right now. After Elliott Road, the next projects that are in the 5-year plan would be Main Street. To add sidewalks and bike lanes there, because again, that's another location we don't have those. And then we would be installing a signal at Springbrook and Hayworth is in the 5-year plan. We've also had conversations about Mountain View coming up next versus Main Street. So, things can still change.
So what will happen to the parking though? Because when I go down that road, because we travel it all the time to go to elementary school, how will the parking work? Because I know that their driveways are already really short. So you couldn't possibly take more from their properties. So would the parking go away to make bike lanes?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. And unfortunately, I think as Dan noted earlier, is that we have a lot of streets that are in the same situation. Main Street is the same way. There's no sidewalks, there's no bike lanes, and people park on the street. And so unfortunately, it's a function of an older city and improving the streets to allow for everybody, whatever their mobility, to get around.
I just wonder about the cost, like pros versus cons. Like what is it worth? Because a lot of people have 3 cars, so how do they park if they don't have? They already have narrow driveways and then no on-street parking. Do they become?
Yeah, actually, what I will say is parking is a big issue. Even in the newer development, because as the lots get smaller, there's less room to park, and there's actually less room to park on the street because the driveways get closer together.
That's
So
a purchaser's
it's a struggle
choice.
all over town.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm kind of wondering too. Is it worth putting bike lanes in that maybe people will use, but maybe not because it doesn't go anywhere for even up to 5 years, and you're losing parking now.
And as you squeeze the sidewalks and the bike lanes closer to the houses, you have vehicles that are there and their tail ends, extend out, and there's a risk there.
Yeah. Okay, and then just the other question I just have 2 more. The row width of the new proposed plan simulation, it seems like it varies. Can you guys tell me at the narrowest and what at the widest you guys have it planned to be?
Say that again, sorry.
Oh, okay. So the simulation video that you just, you have presented to the council, it looks like the row width will vary because of the different design elements that you're going to be using. So I'm just curious, what will be the most narrow point of the road on the row, and what will be the widest row width that you'll be using?
The road itself will be, the narrowest will be 22 feet wide. And those
I don't mean the road. I mean the row, which includes the sidewalks, green space, bike lanes, travel lanes. Total width, what will that be, narrowest to the widest?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Is that something you could email me?
The widest will be 60 feet. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I figured that because there's some parts where it has all the elements.
Right.
And as proposed right now, it's a 11-foot travel lane, 7-foot buffered bike lane, half a foot of curb, and a 6-foot sidewalk.
Okay.
When we're curb tight. And then we like to have a 6-inch behind the sidewalk. So for future replacement, or if somebody has to step off the sidewalk, there's a little bit of a sidewalk shoulder.
Right,
so it rounds that out to an even foot.
Yeah, okay, so will it be, with that extra 6 inches, will that be 61 feet or 60 feet?
No, that eliminates the planter strip. So it's 11 plus 7 is 18, 18 and a half, plus 6 is 24 and a half. What's that?
54 feet?
55.
55 feet.
If it's on one side, if we do curb tight on both sides, so I'm just going from center line. So 18 plus a half is 18 and a half.
Yeah.
Plus a 6 foot is 24 and a half plus a half foot. So if we eliminate the landscape strip on both sides and go with the 6-foot sidewalk, it would be a 50-foot right of way.
Yeah. I figured. I've kind of been doing some of the math, but I was just curious with the simulation how you guys had put the sidewalks. I know you were saying that at the front, tail end, south end of Elliott, they'd be 6-foot wide sidewalks, but then maybe they were narrowing at some point. So I was just curious about that. Okay, and then my last question, and then I just have a point to make, is I'm wondering about mailboxes. Will they become community mailboxes where everyone has like a key and they have open them up, or will they all still continue to be individual? I don't know if that's a post office code thing or not. Just curious about it.
That's a post office thing, and it's certainly something that we can talk about if the neighbors want to go to the big boxes or not.
No.
Part of that is part of it will be a call that's made by the post office. They get to decide where those post boxes go.
Yeah.
And so.
And then
we have not engaged them in this conversation yet because we're just not there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then my last point, and then I'll be quiet, is that I've measured the travel lane width in front of my house multiple times just because I've been doing the math, kind of being like, where is this going to hit on our front yard, and like, is this going to hit our maple tree? Anyways, our travel lane there is 10 feet. And I know on the website and other places you said that it won't be widening anywhere. Everything's already 11 or more. Some places will be narrowing, but ours is 10 feet. So I'm just curious, is ours going to continue to stay 10 feet or are you guys going to extend it wider? Will it have to be 11 feet? Is kind of what I'm wondering.
Yeah, the minimum lane width would be 11.
Okay.
So in contrast to what we've been saying, the road gets wider.
Which, okay, and so then that's my only last thing is that we have been doing the speed study right in front of Mr. DeHaant's house. And that's where you guys are hitting speeds up to 54 miles per hour, I believe it was. And if they're already 10 feet wide roads and you're getting at 54 feet speeds there, if you make them wider, won't they be faster?
The concept of why they speed, I can't tell you. The reason we're putting the curb extensions in is to break that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
If you stand at the high school and look towards 99, it looks like a drag strip because there's extra pavement, because there's no side, there's no trees next to the driving travel lanes. When you introduce that side friction, people slow down.
I see.
The identical statement.
I do appreciate some of the design elements.
Isn't
like
it common traffic engineer? Isn't it common traffic engineer knowledge that you widen the street, people tend to go faster? And I've heard that in hundreds of traffic meetings.
Everything is context sensitive.
Well, your statement applies to Deborah Road. It's a drag strip. We could repeat that statement on and apply it to other roads. I think that Brandy's made an excellent observation, but we can't obviously conduct all of this evening, and it would be a lot easier in person. And Roy, I've already offered myself and Jerry in years past to install a sidewalk, but of course we can't. So.
Thank you for your time.
Karen, question?
Yeah, yes. Someone had a question. Sorry, Brandy.
Just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, Karen, I was going to ask one more question if we could.
Sure.
There was mentioned there was a showing on the PowerPoint of the BLST, I think it was, the PLST. Both the alternatives that were chosen were the 1 out of 4, which was the, I guess, best of the best option and the widest of the wide option. And considering the fact if we have, in fact, on those places taken the sidewalk and the bike lane off of the street, could the bike lane be narrowed to 6 feet, or sometimes sidewalks are 3 feet? Has there been consideration of changing these down to either 6 feet or a 4-foot or a 3-foot sidewalks?
3-foot sidewalks are not allowed for ADA. They have to be 4 to 5 feet because you have to have two-way travel on each sidewalk, so you cannot go down to 3 feet on sidewalks. So that's so I'll answer that. And then, folks, this is going to automatically end in 11 minutes. I have 2 people whose hands are up, so I want to get to them really quick. And then certainly continue to email me, call me if you have additional questions. And Dan and Tyler, we can certainly meet. Like I said, I will be back in town next week, so we can meet if you want to. So Nick, did you want to talk really quick?
What about the 6-foot and the 4-foot?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hey, I just like to say the project. I mean, I'm full in favor of this project. I think the design that you guys did is very nice. I've been living here since 2012. I don't have the luxury of going to other houses down south for half the year. My wife just gave me the don't talk about stuff. But I just wanted to say there's reasons why people stay silent and not being supportive of this. Elliott Road is not a country road anymore. This is almost literally, we're talking about downtown Newberg. There needs to be 2 sidewalks on this road. multiple people that every time that I've seen, they always walk on the east side of the road, bikes or walking, because they don't want to cross the street. There needs to be crosswalks on Elliott. There needs to be new lighting. The lighting is horrible. The sidewalk on our side is crumbling. And I understand for Roy going across, that involves money for a lot of homeowners, and that's something that we just can't maintain sometimes. But this project is needed, and so I hope cooler heads can prevail and a compromise can happen so this project can go forward. And I'm going to stop with that.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to open it up one more comment, and know that this is recorded, and we'll get it up on the website tomorrow also. Rick, Mayor, you wanted to ask, you raised your hand.
Right.
Hey, Karin, I wanted to get 6 foot and 4 foot out there.
Okay, I will answer that offline.
Great, thank you.
Well, some of us online would like to find out.
Okay.
So there are opportunities to go down to 6 foot. That's a standard bike lane width. Again, we did the buffered bike lane to provide for additional safety for those bikes. 4 foot sidewalks can go for a short distance, but then they have to go up to 5 foot per ADA. So there's that.
We do currently have ADA sidewalks that were just modified on the east side 2.5, 3 years ago. We spent the money to modify them and make them ADA approved.
Those were the ramps, correct. The sidewalks themselves were not. Okay, so Mayor, you raised your hand?
I did. Thank you, Karin. Thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this call. Tony, all the neighbors, etc. Unfortunately, I apologize. And Dan, you mentioned the fact that this is not the most appropriate way to go, but it is unfortunately the times we're living in. But I'd just like to say, I'd like to underscore a couple things. We've got on this call, we've got the neighbors, we've got Roy Gathercole. I hate to characterize you this way, but I will as an ADA advocate. And we've got the superintendent of schools on this call in Joe Morlock. So at the last city council meeting, what we thought was I think, I won't speak for everybody, I'll speak for myself. I would like to see the greatest compromise that we can achieve. Flat out. And Mr. Smith, if you have suggestions for us that we can try to work with, I am totally in agreement with that. However, I will say again, just as one person, and please don't think that I have any more vote than I do. I have 1 of 7 votes. That's all I have. As long as kids are safe, it's ADA accessible, right? And we can make a compromise with the neighbors. I'm all for it. So again, I thank you, Karin. I thank you very much for hosting us, and Tony. And the rest of you, thank you for sharing, for taking your evening to discuss this. So thank you greatly.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So what's going to happen, like on one of, we can't get online, so we haven't been able to see. Our computer is broken, so I'm on the phone. So we haven't been able to see anything. So I live at 911, and what I'm wondering is there going to be any change in what we had the first time with these old maps? Is there going to be any change along that area, that side of the road?
Actually, let me reach out to you tomorrow. The video is the meeting's gonna shut down automatically. So I don't want to be in the middle of a conversation with you about that. So let me reach out to you tomorrow. Do you, if you want to, can you send me an email so I have your contact information and we will look at that specifically for you?
Well, how about a phone call? That'd work better.
I can do that too. You can, in the chat box, you can send me a private chat to give me your phone number, so you don't have to give it to everybody.
Does not have online access, unfortunately.
That's all right. Okay. I like phone calls. I'll just give it to you. Because I'm not on the computer right now. I'm on my phone. Okay. 704-4494.
And that's a 503?
Yes.
Okay. I will give you a call tomorrow.
Okay.
Talk about that specifically.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody have any last comments that they want to make? I want to thank everybody for coming out. Again, I apologize. I know this is awkward. It's awkward for me. I'm used to walking and talking with my hands. So I'm trying not to do that because I know it's distracting. I've had my dog in and out, trying to get attention and trying not to do that. So, but thank you for coming out again. Dan and Tyler, if you want to set up a meeting next week and we can talk specifically about those other issues that you had, and I can make sure that you've got the latest exhibits for in front of your houses in particular or locations in particular, and we'll go from there. So again, thank you very much, and we reach out and we will answer what we can.
When you have that meeting, the Avolios would like to be on that in that meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I can do that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you then, Karen. Thank you, Mayor Rogers. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you. Good night, all.